Hey, I'm not, and I made this spreadsheet of all the cards that are not worth crafting in Gwent. This time we're gonna look at all the Northern Realms cards that are just not that viable anymore or that have never been viable. If you wanna take a closer look at this spreadsheet, you can just click the link in the description of this video. Also, join me in the YouTube comments or on Discord to discuss all the cards that you do or do not agree with. Let's start off with Prophet Lebioda. He is an alternative way to protect your engines, alternatively to Donimir of Troy, the Northern Realms defender. Also, Prophet Lebioda has some synergy in the shield archetype, but the shield archetype is basically just a meme deck, and even in that deck you wouldn't always play Prophet Lebioda just because he's a bit too expensive for inclusion. So Prophet Lebioda does neither of his roles that good, that efficiently, so he's just not worth including. Matkian is supposed to be a removal tool for Northern Realms, but his Deathblow ability is what makes him quite bad. If you wanna remove a big unit, you'll have first of all buff Matkian a bunch, and then you'll have to have another unit which also does damage to finish that enemy unit off. So that's a bit too much setup for a simple removal card, and while he has semi-decent points for provisions, he just isn't worth it because Northern Realms has much better control and removal tools. The next card is basically a worse Ildiko. Ildiko, who has 10 points for 9 provisions and gives every Northern Realms unit you play Zeal. Meanwhile, Wes only gives Zeal 1 time and she's 7 points for raid provisions, making her 1 point below provisions while Ildiko is 1 above. So basically Wes, who already wasn't played that much, got power crept with the Master Mirror expansion, making her not a viable option for Northern Realms decks currently. Odorin is a very vulnerable engine. Whenever you play a warfare card, he boosts himself, but by boosting himself he plays right into all sorts of toll removal, into Geralt, into Poison, into all the Skellige cards that came with Master Mirror. So Odorin is very vulnerable, and his payoff isn't that high because the resupply archetype just isn't that good and has really never been played that much. Now, Bloody Flail. Bloody Flail gives enemy units bleeding for 8 turns. In the neutral cards video I already said that giving bleeding or vitality for very long durations is a very vulnerable ability due to the abundance of purifies. Now, you could argue that with the Soldier Swarm archetypes that Northern Realms has, Bloody Flail could be a decent control option, but dealing 8 damage isn't really that necessary when you are Northern Realms. You have a bit of an arsenal of control options, so you won't have to resort to Bloody Flail. If one day Warfare and Resupply are a bit better and can be somehow integrated into a soldier deck, then maybe Bloody Flail will be good, as it's 8 points for 6 provisions, but I think until that time comes, 8 for 6 won't be that good anymore. Now, moving on to bronzes. Delivering Cavalry used to be a 4 provision card when Portal was still strong, but with the Portal nerf it became a 5 provision card, and setting them up became that much more difficult. You have to play a Delivering Cavalry pretty early in the round, but with the way Order decks worked and work, you want to start straight off with Order cards like, let's see if I can find it real quickly. You want to start with, I think it's also a 5 provision card actually. It also has been nerfed. Yes, Valyrian Arbalest. You want to start off with those guys if you play an order heavy deck. So Lyrian Cavalries just won't be worth it in an order deck because they themselves don't have any order ability. You could maybe buff them by making them 4 points, 3 points for 5 provisions with Zeal and Order boost by 1, so they'll be able to trigger the Arbalists. But the way they are right now, they are just not worth it. If you wanna build a order heavy deck, then you wanna just include units with order, unless they are very strong units like Philippa or Falibor maybe. But right now, Lyrian Cavalries are just not worth it. Moving on from Cavalry to Infantry, with Temerian Infantry. They boost an enemy unit by 1 for every boosted unit in a row. In the row they are played into. So yeah, if you wanna set up a boosted row, you play right into Erden, and Erden is a card you generally wanna play around. Also, there's just a far better option that Northern Realms currently has in the Valyrian Scytheman, who boosts himself by 1 for reach. Boosted allied unit, no matter on which row you play him, no matter on which row those allied units are, so Temerian Infantry while damage might be a good alternative. They just aren't worth it that much. You're forced into row stacking, you're forced into playing into Igni and Erden, which you just do not want to do. Now Siege Master, also a part of the resupply archetype, but his resupply ability is just so conditional. You'll have to have 2 adjacent siege units to get the full value out of him. Now, siege engines can be removed and oftentimes get removed quite quickly because they have other abilities or abilities that make them a worthy removal tool, so Siege Master far too often just will end up being played next to no siege engines, his resupply ability just going through with each warfare card you play, but not getting the points. So Siege Master is just a bit too conditional currently, and not only is he conditional, but also resupply isn't that good of a keyword right now. Now, Rivian Pikemen, I think you see where I'm going with this. Resupply, again, isn't that good, and being a 3-point unit, he can get removed quite quickly. Also, 2 points of damage just aren't that important in Northern Realms. So yeah, the Rivian Pikeman just doesn't have the points for provision that he needs and isn't part of a archetype that is currently at all usable, so Rivian Pikeman goes into the do not craft pile. Now Rune Word. Rune Word gives an allied unit a shield and then vitality for 4 turns. 2 statuses that can easily be purified, especially if you put this onto something like a Edirnian Mauler? No, not an Edirnian Mauler, but the Tridem Infantry. They're next to each other in the deck builder, but they're separate cards. If you give this unit a shield and vitality, this unit will either get removed or get purified, making your Rune Word be essentially a 1 point, maybe 2 point card for 4 provisions. Also, the spell keyword just doesn't really synergize with anything Northern Realms currently has. Mad's Charge is a warfare card, so it does have some synergy in terms of it triggering resupply, which, as I already said, isn't that good. But it gives you as a base condition 3 points and 2 armor for 4 provisions. A 3 for 4 is plenty bad if you look at the current Northern Realms card pool. Also, the vitality condition on a knight doesn't give you that much, because as I've already said, the Trident infantry would be a prime candidate for units you want to give vitality to, but it is not a knight, it's just a soldier, as you just have seen. So Mad Charge just doesn't have a synergy right now, the knight archetype isn't there, a warfare archetype isn't there, and it's bad points for provisions. Now, Syntrian Artificer, another card from the shield archetype, which also has just not enough synergy, not enough necessity, and even in a shield heavy deck, you likely wouldn't want to play him. The Syntrian Artificer is just a bit low tempo. The last Northern Realms card that is just not worth crafting, in my opinion, is the Banart Tutor. I used to play a mage heavy deck. The mage heavy deck is one where you try to create as many Syntrian Spellweavers as you can and just duplicate them with Queen Adalia with reinforcement, and then you play tons and tons of mages. Banart Tutor is a mage and he supports this, or maybe another way to play a mage archetype in Northern Realms, but his points are distributed quite badly. So, if you don't have any mages on the board, he's a 2-point card. His brick potential is just a bit too high. When he bricks very badly. And also boosting units by 4 points makes him already a bit vulnerable to toll removal, a bit vulnerable to stuff like poison or Morgvark. And the mage deck as I played it didn't have Banart Tutor in it, because the low provision points were filled with cards you'd wanna use in a round 1 maybe, where you don't play that many mages. So yeah, Banart Tutor, bad point distribution, and doesn't support the mage archetype that he wants to support in a way that's worth it. Let's take one last look at the spreadsheet. Those were all the Northern Realms cards that are not worth crafting in my opinion. Of course, if you disagree, leave a comment or tell me on Discord. Links to the Discord and to the spreadsheet are down below. That being said, thanks for watching, and see you next week with Scrat Hill. Till then, bye.